Good evening and welcome back to the Hibs Observer. I'm Liam Bryce, joined by Craig Nisbet for our Monday night analysis episode, looking back at Livingston 2, Hibs 2 in the Scottish Premiership. Really not a great result and not a great performance from David Gray's side. It's becoming a season of inconsistencies so far. 2 wins on the bounce, followed by a defeat at home, and then this disappointing draw where Hibs could really have put the game to bed after they went 2-1 up in the second half. But to be honest, in the balance of play, and I think David Gray was quite honest in his assessment, saying we didn't do enough to win the game. That was echoed by Martin Boyle in his post-match interview as well. So clearly, Hibs not happy with the result or their own performance, and we're going to have a look back and see where... Pick out any good bits if we can, but maybe have a wee look at how it didn't work so well for Hibs on the day. Just before we get started, folks, though, as always, a quick word from our sponsor. The Hibs Observer is brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV today. With thousands of jobs across Edinburgh and the surrounding area, you'll find the one at S1 Jobs, so start your search today. Craig, thanks for joining us back for a second time to talk about this game. You're a glutton for punishment.
I know. I was a bit exasperated on Saturday right after the game. I realised that that's not the best time for talking about a game. But yeah, it's been interesting, kind of looking back at it, and then reading your article that came out today, and then just seeing a little bit on social media about the team at the minute. So I think it'll be good to get into and discuss things a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I just let off some steam if you need to. As we said, it was a kind of not a great game all round. Hibs obviously took the lead after 17 seconds through Jamie McGrath, but the performance kind of peaked there, to be honest. I mean, it was slightly better at points in the second half, but again, nothing to get particularly excited about. We'll start off as we usually do, just having a look at the expected goals race chart for the game. Let me just cycle back to it. A couple of spoilers in here as to what we're going to be getting to later on. So yeah, I mean, I think David Gray's assessment of the first half was that Hibs were second best all over the pitch. And I mean, there's kind of see there that neither team really created much across that first 45 minutes. Obviously, these stats bomb graphics don't take into account goals that were disallowed, so that kind of any XG accumulated via that is sort of wiped, obviously, because if you're thinking, well, Livingston had the ball in the net a couple of times before they had a goal allowed to stand. That's why this doesn't show up on there. But you can see here, I mean, McGrath's goal in the first minute, a pretty brilliant strike. But you can see from there on, up until Hibs retook the lead, didn't really create anything of note again, did they?
No. I mean, obviously going into the game, there was a couple of changes with like Nicky Cadden out, Chris Cadden out, and Bowie on the bench. So it did change things up a little bit. I don't think anybody would have argued with those changes ahead of the game. Chaiwa coming in against Rangers, he did very well, and Mulligan out to right wing back and gives you another attacking threat. So agreed with that. And Nicky Cadden, he's, despite I thought he'd kind of got his form back a little bit, the last couple of games have not been great for him. So, it was maybe welcome to see Obita back in there. And then, of course, having Boyle and Cleege through the middle. So before the game, you were kind of expecting balls in behind, and, that was I kind of thought it was going to be the strategy, really. But, we started off with, as you said, it was, I think, Salinger, long ball, headed clear, Rocky fires it back in, and it's an unbelievable leap and head on from Cleege. I'm not sure how much he really meant it, but from Cleege, and a ridiculous finish, like unbelievable. The technique in that is unbelievable. And when the goal goes in, you kind of think, right, that hopefully settles any nerves, and now we can just get the ball down, we can play, we've got a goal cushion. But it almost sort of stifled us a bit, really. And after that, like, David Gray's right, we were second best. Livy outplayed us across the pitch, something like they were knocking it about, they were being really progressive. I felt we were kind of relying on going long quite a lot and quite aimless. We couldn't get Barlaser on the ball. And then there was loads of sort of like quite uncharacteristic mistakes. Like Salinger had one where he just about, Rocky kind of got back in and just about rescued it.
Yeah.
We were taking too many touches and getting caught, and then we were flapping and stuff. But it almost reminded me back to kind of earlier on in the season, a little bit of how we were playing in some games. So yeah, the first half was really, really strange. And to be honest, we were probably lucky to go in at 1-1 because, the other goals that were disallowed, I mean, I don't know, especially the one involving Hanley, like he's brilliant at winning free kicks. He does just fall over. But it was kind of soft. So
one of these goes against you, you're probably not, you're not happy with that, are you?
Nah, definitely not. So yeah, I thought it was a really, the first half was as poor as I think I've seen us for a fair while.
Aye, it was. It was just really ineffective, I thought, and there was a sloppiness about it as well. A lot of misplaced passes, which again I don't. We've criticised some performances and stuff this season, but I don't remember using the word sloppy too often or careless. Like I think there's been games where it's just maybe it's not quite happened in certain areas, in certain aspects, but yeah, there was a sort of slackness about that first half display. That I don't think we're used to seeing with this Hibs team, even in games where they don't get the result they're looking for. It's not often an accusation you can throw at them. I don't think anyway. But there was a kind of, it was flat as well. And I think you do have to give a bit of credit to Livingston. I suppose they looked really up for it. I think obviously been beaten by Hibs twice already this season and taking a bit of a sore one at Easter Road the last time. It kind of looked as though determined not to allow that to happen again. But I think you go away to places like this and you've kind of got to expect that to be the case. Obviously,
yeah, and
Livingston, like nobody really gets more often than not, what I'm saying is you don't get an easy ride at that venue, do you?
No, and I think like they were bound to change things up from that last performance, and they changed shape. I don't know if that, against us at home, they tried to kind of match us and in terms of like that kind of three at the back and wing backs and stuff like that, and it didn't really work at all. And they obviously did their homework and changed things up a little bit. And we were saying on sort of Saturday after the game, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it's like in the tactical masterclass department really, but because the space and everything was still there for us, but we just couldn't seem to get going. But 3 games in a week, there would naturally be some changes, and as I said, I don't think anybody would have. I certainly didn't question them before. I mean, I've got a soft spot for Bowie, so I would want him to play, but I understand why he didn't, and it was probably the right decision. And Boyle got the goal in the second half, and Clegy got an assist, so you can't really argue with that. But and as an attacking threat in that game, we just could not get it going at all, no. And that led to turnovers, and Livy exploited us really well.
Yep. So obviously taking us into the second half, Hibs do go 2-1 up, as you say, through Martin Boyle. It was maybe slightly improved after the interval, but not, again, nothing to get particularly excited about. But it is, if we're going to try and extract some positivity from this, it is a very well worked goal.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was 1 or 2 players that kind of got pass marks in the game. Chaiwa being one of them, probably Mulligan, the other one, in terms of, he could have walked out with 2 assists if Bowie's goal was onside. But yeah, I mean, Chaiwa just, it's like a bit of a melee on the right-hand side, and he breaks with the ball, and it's just a great drive and run down. He does like a little slip and turn, somehow manages to keep control of the ball. And it's a great supporting run from Mulligan, and that's the benefit you get from him at right wing back, is that that Mulligan Chaiwa takes the space down the wide area. It's natural for him to run inside and underlap because it just feels like he's playing in midfield. So he does that well, and it's not actually the best ball across. Like, he does put a bit of venom on it, and it's very Bergkamp-esque from Boyle. I don't know how much he meant it, but it's an unbelievable touch and sets him up, and he sort of takes that little pause before rifling it home with his left foot. So, I mean, when you look at the right-hand side and you look at putting Chaiwa in there, Mulligan right, and having Boyle on that side as well, that's probably what David Gray absolutely wants. Those two, kind of that swashbuckling down the right hand side, and then Boyle in there to get the goal. So it was fantastic, a really fantastic goal. And then, but as we can see there, after that, we made a triple sub, and then another sub, and then we just seemed to let the game peter out and just sort of invite pressure. And as we know this season, whether it's just before half time or just after half time or just in the 90th minute or so, or even towards the end of extra time, as we saw in Europe, we're susceptible to concede. I think I worked out it's 14 goals now across like between 40 and 45, 45, 50, 90 plus, and then in extra time. So I kind of thought we had got rid of that. I thought we had sort of, I know against Hearts we lost, but in the last couple of games, but we, when you think about it, we conceded against Aberdeen, consolation goal, but we still lost the goal in the 90th minute, and then obviously so it's just a frustrating thing, and it just seems no matter when we tinker the team and change about, that we just seem susceptible to that at the moment.
Yeah, as you can see, their Hibs created nothing from between 70. Well, they're somewhere between the 70 and 75th minute, or maybe airing on the 74th minute, perhaps onwards to that point, and you can see Livingston building a wee bit of momentum in the last 5-10. And then, as you say, you are kind of, when there's only one goal in it, you are susceptible to, things like that, Nicky Cadden handball happening. But just to take it back a wee bit, you mentioned the triple substitution. What did you think of the subs and how that potentially changed the flow of the game?
It's weird that, thinking like last season, you could almost predict Gray's subs and when they were going to happen, who it was going to be, and roughly what minute it was going to be. We were quite, there was always normally a midfield change, there was always a striker change, sometimes a wing back switch as well. And then this season, I don't know where this triple sub thing has come from, but it was strange to do it right after a goal. I think, I didn't, I think right after a goal, you've got a bit of momentum. It's you maybe changing it straight away and getting these guys into the game. It's easy in hindsight to criticise it. I suppose, Hoylett has a header when he not long comes on, and then obviously Bowie scores and it gets disallowed for offside. And I suppose if you go out, 3-1 there, you're saying perfect timing with those subs.
Genius manager.
Yeah, genius, exactly. But at the moment, we're not quite getting the rub of the green in that way. But I would say, like, in terms of structurally changing the team, it didn't. Bowie coming on was a good move because it gave us something to play through, it gave them something else to think about at the back. McGrath, obviously the minutes that he's been playing, they probably want to monitor, and he got his goal and had his impact in the opening seconds. And then of course, like Obita, he was quiet in an attacking sense, going for Iredale and then getting Nicky Cadden on, which again, I think we said against Hearts, at that point when Boyle had hit the bar, that would have been the right time to get Nicky Cadden on and go and exploit Hearts at that moment, and we didn't do it. So it's it looks like he tried to do that, but again, when Nicky Cadden come on, it just didn't work, and then obviously then he gives away a penalty. So it's I feel for Gray at the moment. It's a wee bit, he's like sort of damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. But I just don't know how I feel about a triple sub. I don't think the team are quite settled enough yet to be doing that. I think maybe we need to drip feed them as we go.
Yeah, there is. I think, again, it's. I think I do agree, and that after you've just scored, to make a significant amount of changes like that does kind of can risk being disruptive, I think. But then, as you say, to sort of counter that with Hoylett has a good chance, Bowie has the ball in the net and it gets disallowed. So it's one of those. It's I think, like you say, damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. And the subs are always, whether it felt like or it was objectively, subjectively the right thing to do in that moment, it's always kind of judged by the result beforehand and then the result afterwards. So it's like it is. But Kieran Bowie's disallowed goal, I'm assuming I'm going to make a think what's quite a safe assumption is that you've probably watched it a few times since Saturday. So where do you stand on that? What do you think it's? I mean, the offside. It's you're told it's it's an objective thing. The lines are drawn. You can see, but it looks to the naked eye, it looks like he's onside, doesn't it? But it's one of those.
Yeah,
I
mean, you're getting into like perceptions and depth perceptions and camera angles and stuff. It's crazy to like look at a goal like that. I think when you first see it, it looks on, and even when they draw the lines, there's an element of it. Some of the lines look like it's not quite at the sort of the closest defender. When you see it, I think it's the right back. It looks like it's kind of going through the middle of his body rather than the shoulder closest to the goal, and you can't see the centre half inside exactly where his body position is. I mean, Bowie is moving forward, and but there's just it's one of them that I think when I first seen it back, I was convinced that was onside, so I started to tweet going Bowie's goal, and then obviously when it got disallowed and I seen the lines, it didn't look right. But will we get an apology this week? I don't know, but it's a frustrating one because I think for Bowie it would have been I think he needed it, and it would have been nice for him to come off the bench and score that goal. It settles the game, and then you could look at your front three and go, we've had 2 goals and an assist from our strikers. That's brilliant, and it builds a bit of confidence going into the next game. So I really did feel for him, but yeah, it was one of those VAR decisions that if it goes for you, I think you're laughing, but when it's against you, it really, really stings, especially when you concede late as well.
Sorry, folks, I dropped out a wee second there. Right now, I thought I thought we were in for an early finish there. I thought I was going for an early bath. Sorry for the connection, completely dropped out there for me. But back with us now. It's the perils of doing this live, unfortunately. So yeah, just moving on a wee bit. So there's been a lot of I think it's been quite noisy in the aftermath of this result in terms of where the team is at. And I don't think there's any doubt that things could be better. There's been a lot of points dropped from positions where Hibs shouldn't be dropping points, as you said there. That stat about 14 goals in those timeframes it is quite damning. I think, but then you sort of contrast it with this, which is you're trying to look a wee bit at the wider picture and see where things are sort of heading long term. So this is just like a look at the Scottish Premiership table as for difference in expected goals between for and against. And so Hibs are sitting third in the table, and then they're sitting third here. Quite, Celtic, Hearts, and Hibs quite far ahead of everybody else in terms of this. Hibs are, in terms of expected goals for, I don't have the chart, the individual chart here for that, but they're second only behind Celtic. They're top 4, I think, for XG conceded. I'll need to double check that one, but they're here, and this is, again, this is no guarantee of points and results, and it doesn't tell you enough. It doesn't tell you about, these wee sort of intangibles within games. For example, needing to see things out and looking maybe a wee bit panicky in the last sections of games, and then obviously the prime example of that there at the weekend is giving away a penalty from a situation where Hibs had the ball, gave it away, it leads to the Livingston corner, and then the next thing the opposition have got a spot kick. But it does say that obviously expected goals, it's a very it's a very love-hate. It's a bit Marmite. Everybody's got an opinion on it, but it is a wee bit misunderstood in my view, and it just sort of looks at it's just an effective measure of the quality of chances that a team is creating and the quality of chances that they're giving up. So this chart here basically shows you that Hibs are, in general, on the right side of that. They've got a positive XG, and they've XG conceded per 90 minutes, I believe, is just over 1. I think it's sitting at about 1.14, at least as far as the last 10 or so games go, the sort of rolling average of that. So again, the underlying stats are good, but I get it. It only really matters if you are able to back this up with results. So you might ask, well, why are we bothering looking at it? But I think there was a similar situation last season when the results weren't going for Hibs, but the underlying numbers looked more positive than things were suggesting. I mean, I don't know what your take on this is, Craig, or whether you how unhappy you are with the start to the season. What kind of changes do you need to be made in terms of personnel, tactics, or how much are you on the other side of that and thinking this is going to be all right? Where do you sit? Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. It's somewhere in the middle where I think there's a little bit of recruitment issues that we still, I think we're missing in terms of that other striker. Like Barlaser came in and he's done okay, but you can still tell that we're probably missing someone, potentially in that other role, that deeper kind of Triantis role for, that could do a bit of everything. And as we said a few weeks ago, I think right wing back, I do think although Mulligan's out there and does a good job, I think we'd all much prefer him playing central. So I think there's that side of recruitment. It's taken us a while to get a settled team, in terms of, we had Smith at the start and then got the Salinger and sort of, Hanley was out, not in the team, and now he's come in and looked better in there. Obviously, Cleege took a long time to get going and to get given minutes. So I feel like that's taken us a while to get settled. However, and obviously it's heartening to see those stats, because I do think there is some games where, like, without seeing them, you do feel like we're creating opportunities, we're getting a wee bit unlucky with VAR, or we're hitting the post, or we're hitting the bar, we're not getting that rub the green, and then we're being punished up the other end. Like, that's how it sometimes feels. But I would say, in terms of fan criticism, I would say, like, the style of play at the minute isn't particularly good, and against Livingston it seemed we were very, one-dimensional would be what I would say we were, and we didn't really seem to have the answers to try and mix things up a little bit. So I think when you add that all in and you're not quite getting the results and you're getting draws and you're dropping points, and obviously you're seeing Hearts doing what they're doing, and it probably just adds to everything really there. And I think that's probably why there's a feeling a bit of discontent. But when you look back from where we've been, what Gray did at the end of that second half of the season, what we grew into, what we became, it's far too early to be looking at changing manager and things like that. For me, I think he certainly earned the right to get more time, and I do think obviously results have to improve, but we're still sitting third. I know there's games in hand. We're still sitting third, and I think I've seen enough to think that he'll be able to get it right. But of course, he's under no illusions that if he doesn't, then there will be pressure and calls around that. And I think we said in one of our very early podcasts at the start of the season, like, it's been crazy for him in terms of taking the role on, being probably a game away from being sacked, to then turning it round, going on this crazy unbeaten run, breaking all these records, and then starting this season off. And it's kind of been a bit of a mixed bag. So it's a really interesting time. I was really surprised on social media to see the sort of thoughts and feelings around it. I think it's kind of divided the fans a little bit, but I think we need to back them, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, it feels like pure frustration, and maybe people always say things in the minutes after games that they maybe sometimes, I don't know, then maybe in the following day, once I've slept on it or whatever you want to call it, not quite so strong. There's always strong reactions and opinions after the game, but I can understand why people are frustrated. I think there's the frustration again is heightened by the fact that it's not just the drop points, it's how they're being dropped. It's this familiar pattern of goals conceded at really bad times, getting into a position of strength within games, commanding positions, and then last minute penalties, or for we want to flip it around against Rangers in midweek, Hibs missing a penalty of their own. You think back to, what was it, the Falkirk game, 2-0 up, Kilmarnock at home, 2-0 up, and then all these sort of points drop, it starts to accumulate, and you look at the league table and you think, well, Hibs still in third, but it could be so much better. So I think there is definitely a heightened frustration, I think, from the manner of how the points are dropped. I mean, obviously there's no good way to drop points, but there's been so many sort of like sucker punches for people who, sitting watching games, travelling to games, and just kind of, those kind of blows that are a bit more, a bit harder to take when you think, oh, well, what could have been. But I agree with you. I think that it's not been awful. I don't think some of it. I think some of the performances recently have been a bit uninspiring. I would say that much. But the weekend game there, especially, there just wasn't an awful lot to like about that. But then, even then, Hibs should probably have still won the game. It's a difficult one to, I think, to get a really true and sort of certain, handle on where this team is at and where it's going to go. Because you feel like it could go either way. It's obviously, we're looking at the underlying numbers in there and suggesting it's positive, but I think it's not necessarily a guarantee that the results are going to turn, but it is an indicator that a lot of the underlying elements that you perhaps need to do so are there. But then it's these intangible things as well. Martin Boyle was talking a lot about it. He was talking about like fight, and saying that in the first half, Livingston probably wanted it more. Saying that the penny needs to drop in terms of these late goals being conceded, let themselves down too many times this season. So it was quite forthright stuff from Martin Boyle. It was quite honest, in acknowledging that. But I do still think it's a good squad. It's a wee bit light in certain areas. I think there are some things that are going to need to be addressed in January. Not getting the sort of alternative to Kieran Bowie was certainly it certainly hindered David Gray a wee bit, I think, in terms of if he wants to take Bowie off but retain that similar kind of presence that he brings. And I think it makes next week's game against St Mirren. Obviously, we're not done analysing today's game. We will go back to that shortly. I will off on a wee bit of a tangent here, but it's probably worth getting into. It does make that a right big game next week. So we're going to move on, or move back, if you like. We're going to have a look at some of the more tactical elements of Saturday's game. Just while Craig's getting set up there, just if I could encourage you folks, if you are watching along tonight and you have been and you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, it's free to do so. It helps us continue to grow the channel, obviously. It means you get a notification every time we go live with one of these videos, and the more the channel grows, the more content we're able to bring you. So if you're able to like and subscribe while you're watching along tonight, we really, really do appreciate it. It's a huge help for us. And as I said, helps us continue to bring you more content like this. The tactics board is back, and Craig's going to have a look at. So, is it going to have a look first of all? I think at Livingston's setup, how they sort of stopped in that first half.
Yeah, I think we've spoke a lot about, and I've sort of wrote on my Substack about Dan Barlaser, and I think he's obviously in and playing that sort of deeper number 6 role. And I think we all agree he looks really comfortable in there, and he can dictate a game and influence a game really, really well. We said after the Aberdeen game, where he played exceptionally well, that tactically it was bonkers from them, the way they just sort of left them in possession of the ball. Against Rangers, they were pretty clever in the first half. They had a bit of a diamond shape, and it kind of pulled him out, and I thought he really struggled in that game. But in the Livingston game, they obviously set up 4-2-3-1 basically, and Scott Pittman just basically man-marked him the whole game, and we could not get him on the ball at all. And it was really frustrating, because even if he's in this position here, and Livy have got the two sort of wide players, like the space was always going to be down the wings, and obviously if a fullback comes into this area, the space for, say, a Mulligan, sort of like a Chaiwa, or for a Boyle to go into, I honestly expected us to just be going down the wings constantly. Same on the other side as well with Obita, and I just sort of felt that we could not get any of them into the game effectively. And it quite often led to, like, we were in a position like here, and Livingston would just shift across, and it was a bit more of a trickier ball, and then we were just forcing it long. And obviously then when Livy can break up the pitch and they've got a front three or like a three here, it means that our kind of right and left centre backs were kind of pinned. They had a main striker. Barlaser obviously had Pittman in this position here, and then it was just like that sort of 2v2 in the middle of the park. And as I said on Saturday, I think in the second half, the only reason Barlaser got on the ball more was because Pittman went off. I think that was the only reason. And I think what frustrated me watching it is that not once did we ever try and address it. And I think if you've ever seen Levitt play a bit deeper, we've done videos before where if it is tight like this, Levitt often like would come deep to almost be like an extra centre half. It would shove maybe Iredale, and then we could push Obita or Nicky Cadden higher. And then it just gives, this player something to potentially think about. And if Levitt gets the ball deeper, there's a chance there's an extra pass in there, and then we can go out the other side and attack. Or even a little bit simpler than that. And I think Chaiwa did do it a couple of times, to be fair to him, but even just rotating Barlaser out and just moving somebody else into this area, or getting Chaiwa to come and drop in here. Boyle could have came in front of, one of the Livingston holding midfielders to kind of box them out, and we could have had two in here in this position, and there's a chance then we could have played out and played through the middle. But I think potentially that's where fans are getting frustrated about the play, is that we didn't really seem to change anything. We just kept going long, and that became a real frustration. And I think for Barlaser, and I'm not trying to pick on him again, but I think in your article you've said it as well, Pittman drags him out and runs in behind, and he doesn't track him. He gets forced to the ball, and they pull the ball back, and Bakila scores. And I think it was a well-worked goal from a Livy point of view, but from a Hibs point of view, it's a bit of a disaster. And if you are playing him in that role, he absolutely has to be getting on the ball. And I think if Levitt was fit, I think Levitt probably would have come back into the team. I think we do miss that a little bit. And Barlaser, if you go back and look at it, I think his last, up until he started to get regular game time for us, I'm sure he played 45 minutes back in January. And that's really been him. So it's maybe just a bit of fatigue. And again, it's that thing of we don't have enough options. And we do have a lot of players who can play in the middle of the park, but not an option that can come in and do that number 6 role effectively. But the final thing really is just that, obviously when Boyle and Cleege, they did play quite wide from each other. It was obviously like an assist and a goal from both. So you can't really complain. But it just may be something in the future, like we've said before, when we play Barlaser and we have a 2, he needs to be getting on the ball. If it doesn't work, we could be able to go back to a 2, maybe even push somebody forward. And I know people have been saying this for a while about maybe going with a front 3. And you would maybe just play Chaiwa and it would probably have to be Mulligan in this position, or maybe even McGrath, and you could have a front 3. And if you are just going to be going long, you could just argue to have that in there as well. So there's definitely, in that sort of shape that we play, there's not too much flexibility. You have to play with 3 centre-halves. You have to play with wing-backs. But the one bit you can change is that middle 5. And I think maybe if we're going to stick with it, and I think certainly if we want to evolve with it, we probably have to be a bit more flexible in the game with how we play it, and move players around a little bit, and try and just disrupt the opposition, because unfortunately we just continue to do the same thing over and over again, and it didn't really work.
Yeah, well, you know what they say about the definition of insanity. Continue, and Hibs played into that a wee bit by the looks of it on Saturday there. So yeah, we're going to wrap it up for today there, folks. Thanks to Craig for his insight. Thanks to everybody for joining us. Just as I said a wee while ago there, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, it is free to do so. It helps us continue to grow, and we really, really appreciate it. And you'll also get a notification every time we go live. So it's on to St Mirren away on Saturday, a 5:45 kickoff down at Paisley, because it's going to be shown live on Premier Sports. So we'll be building into that one over the next few days. But until then, enjoy the rest of your week, folks, and we'll speak to you again very soon. Cheers.